everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and we've just finished watching Bound for Glory 2018 from Impact Wrestling in New York City. It was a very eventful show, not quite as based on, I guess, just straight wrestling matches as Slammiversary. Yes, a lot of those matches were hardcore, but the event was just match after match after match after match. This was a bit more of a mixed bag. It was a little bit more sports entertaining, in my opinion. We had a whole match or confrontation that was carried out backstage. We had several matches that were kind of changed or like unplanned or featured a mystery opponent, that sort of thing. But generally, I found it quite an entertaining show. So let us know what you think in the comments below. But for now, let's crack into what happened at Bound for Glory. The first match of the night was a fast-paced tag opener between All Ego, Ethan Page and Matt Sydal against the team of Rich Swann, and until a few days before the show, his mystery partner, which was revealed to be Willie Mack, making his Impact Wrestling debut. And unfortunately, myself and Sam had a few issues with the technology, trying to get the stream set up and trying to get the camera set up and all that sort of thing. It wasn't the fault of Fight TV, it was more our fault. But luckily, we did manage to catch, I think, probably about half of the match, and from what we saw, it was really entertaining, fast-paced, a lot of crazy tag team moves and 2-on-1 moves and that sort of thing. And in the end, the babyfaces got the win after Rich Swann hit the Fenix splash. This was a really good match. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was the right choice to open the show. Fast, hard-hitting, energetic, and it got everyone on their feet. So no complaints here at all. I actually thought, on balance, probably one of the better matches on the card, although it was a little bit shorter than some of the more epic matches we'd see later on. We followed that up with Eli Drake versus a mystery opponent, and there was a lot of speculation over who this could be. The fans at one point were chanting Y2J, at another point they were chanting We Want Neville, all while Eli Drake cut one of his heel promos in the middle of the ring. He's a really good talker, he's really good on the mic, quite effortless, and eventually, after running down the hometown crowd to get some heat on him, which made us think actually it would be like a New York hero coming out, like maybe Taz to save the day, it turned out to be bloody James Ellsworth. So Ellsworth came out to an initial sort of pop, but then that quickly turned into heat. A lot of heat on James Ellsworth. This was almost like an accidental double turn. The crowd during the match were actually cheering a lot more for Eli Drake than they were for James Ellsworth. They were booing him at every opportunity, bless him. He tried his best to get the crowd on side. He even mentioned before the match in his little mic segment that he used to date a girl from Staten Island, Carmella reference obviously. But yeah, this did not go the way that I think anyone expected when they planned this out. I think the fans really were a little bit rebellious here. The match didn't last too long. James Ellsworth initially took control because he sucker punched Eli before the bell, but then Drake turned it around, obviously using his superior strength and conditioning and size and all that sort of thing, and eventually won with 2 gravy trains. I think it might have only been originally planned to be 1 gravy train, but then the fans chanted one more time, so he obliged them, hit another gravy train, and picked up the win. But that was not the end of the segment, not by a long shot. So then while Eli Drake celebrated and gloated, he got back on the mic and said, you know what, that wasn't the caliber of opponent I need. I need better opponents than that. Hall of Fame, elite level opponents. And ask and you shall receive. A Hall of Famer did indeed come out to beat him up, and that was Abyss, who was very recently inducted into the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame. Abyss came out, they had a bit of a brawl, and eventually after not very long, Abyss hit the Black Hole Slam, got a table out from under the ring. Eli Drake almost reversed things, turned things around, but eventually Abyss managed to evade his attack and slammed Eli Drake through the table. Pretty nasty looking table spot. He landed clean and everything, but it looked like carnage. It was a nice little crowd popping moment. Again, another, not like the tightest of wrestling matches or anything, it was Eli Drake versus James Ellsworth, but at the same time, it all kind of worked. Even though the crowd turned on Ellsworth, Abyss came out and things got back on track with Drake as the heel being booed, and everyone, it was a nice moment for Abyss to appear on, you know, one of the biggest Impact shows of the year, especially given he was inducted into the Hall of Fame recently. He's been such a loyal servant to the promotion through a lot of dark times as well, and now that they're on the up, it was nice to see them give him a little bit of a moment, a little bit of a nod to Abyss. Then we had the Impact Knockouts Championship match between Tessa Blanchard and Taya Valkyrie. Taya obviously dominated the build-up to this event more than I think a lot of people expected, obviously because of Austin Aries' controversial and quite misguided comments on Twitter aimed at her. I think that was probably an attempt to get a bit of heat on the feud and everything, but it really came across as quite ignorant from Austin Aries, unfortunately. Johnny Impact stepped in. There was a whole load of TMZ stuff in the build-up too, playing off the gossip and the drama between them. But this match, thankfully, was free of all that. At one point, me and Sam thought we spotted Austin Aries lurking at ringside with a cap pulled low over his face. Didn't turn out to be him. I think it was just a ringside assistant or someone working on the show. So that was fine. This was more of a straight wrestling match, and quite a long one. Pretty long, I think, given, I guess, the shortness of the 2 previous matches on the show. It needed to be a little bit longer, and it was once again basically an example of how fantastic and how much promise and potential Tessa Blanchard has. Ultimately, I think this was probably one of the more predictable matches on the show. Tessa Blanchard has all the momentum behind her right now, all the support of everybody. Even though she's a heel, all the fans seem to love her, and it seems like the company loves her as well. They've been booking her really strong, and she's been presenting herself with such strength as well. She's quick, she's excellent technically, she's really hard hitting. That's kind of become her signature style, I guess, in Impact Wrestling. And yeah, again, I was really impressed by Tessa. Impressed by Tyre as well. They both kicked out of each other's finishes as the match went on, but then Tessa finished things off with a move that I'm not actually certain of the name of. I checked online, I think a few places were calling it the Magnum, obviously a reference to Magnum TA, but I'm not quite certain if that's, I think it probably is the right name, but she won with that move anyway. And Taya didn't look weak, you know, she managed to kick out one finisher and seem pretty strong throughout, but again, all the momentum continues to be behind Tessa Blanchard. I think the belt right now is around the waist of the correct wrestler. After that, we had a match which was initially scheduled to be Eddie Edwards versus Moose. Moose obviously has recently turned heel and has joined Austin Aries alongside Killer Kross in a sort of heelish triumvirate at the top of the card. How dastardly, lads, how dastardly. This match was really, really short. It wasn't really much of a match because Eddie Edwards hit the Boston Knee Pie really early on. Could have gone for the pinfall in theory, but decided to go outside of the ring and go for his kendo stick to inflict more punishment on Moose. That would have been against the rules. This obviously wasn't a no DQ match at all, which we realised very quickly when Killer Kross appeared from the crowd and attacked Eddie Edwards, causing the referee to throw the match out. There was then a bit of a beatdown on Eddie Edwards, but he was saved by actually the previous guy that he feuded with, Tommy Dreamer. He defeated Tommy Dreamer at Slammiversary, earned his respect, and now they're both on the same page. Tommy Dreamer came out and said, you know what, that's not the way this goes down. We want to fight and we want it now. He did a bit of a Teddy Long, holler holler, player player, turning it into an impromptu tag match. But one, I think, which was an officially sanctioned match. On the card, there was a referee, the bell rang at the end and all of that. It was Tommy Dreamer and Eddie Edwards versus Moose and Killer Kross. I like this match. I thought it was pretty good for what it was, even though it was like a bit of an unscheduled one on the card. The crowd was still very receptive. It's easy to get behind Eddie Edwards, especially since he's gained this new edgy kind of angle to him. I think he's very easy to get behind as a badass babyface. Obviously, everyone loves Tommy Dreamer. And Killer Kross and Moose are two big, quite easily detestable heels, so that was pretty good too. Eventually, Eddie Edwards got the win with a roll-up for his team, but then the heels did a big old beatdown to get their heat back. Oh, you bastards. Next up, it was OVE versus the team of Pentagon Jr., Fenix and Brian Cage in an OVE rules match, which I incorrectly assumed in the build-up meant weapons, like a sort of street fight brawl, but instead this was, I think OVE rules basically meant a tornado tag. There were no tags, everyone was just in and out of the ring all the time, quite literally as well. There were a lot of dives, a lot of big flippy moves. Fenix was just on fire in this match. This may have been my favourite match on the card, on balance, I think, especially Fenix's performance. He was wonderful. Pentagon looked really slick too, but the story was actually all about Brian Cage. So Fenix and Pentagon gradually got taken out of the match by the good teamwork of OVE. It really got over that while Fenix and Pentagon might be brothers, they're paired with Brian Cage, who isn't necessarily one of their allies really, whereas OVE have been a tag team for a long time now, know each other inside out, and I guess it makes sense that they should, you know, dominate the match, or like at least come out on top at the end because of their close bond. Eventually it was just 3-on-1, the Lucha Brothers have been taken out of the match. Brian Cage really bravely, looked like a monster, looked really strong, really bravely held off all three men for a little bit, spitting at them in defiance, roaring at them, but again OVE just kept blasting him with kicks and kicks and kicks, and eventually Sami Callihan picked up the victory for his team, becoming apparently the first man in Impact Wrestling to pin Brian Cage. Next up we had the Concrete Jungle match between LAX, the team of the regular tag team of Santana Ortiz and their manager Conan against the OGs, the original LAX, Homicide Hernandez, and their manager, but he also wrestles, I really like him, he's really good, Eddie Kingston, Eddie the King Kingston. Both teams came out with very intense entrances, particularly LAX, who came out to like a live rap performance, but they were without Conan, who'd been taken out in a backstage assault earlier on the show. This match was fittingly very violent. Hernandez was busted open very early on and was just pouring with blood by the end of things. There were weapons involved, there were tables in the ring, which both ended up being destroyed when people were just chucked through them. It was a good match, it was entertaining, but I think it suffered a little bit from the fact that the canvas had actually been removed and we only had like the wooden boards exposed underneath. Those boards were a little bit loose and a little bit shaky. One of them actually got popped out of place during one of the entrances, and eventually the referee had to just remove it from the ring, which meant that all the other boards were a little bit loose and were jiggling about, and you could tell that the wrestlers were really like wary of sticking an ankle through accidentally or something like that, especially when they were running about doing dives to the outside and stuff. So it was a little bit stop-start here and there. I still enjoyed it though, it was fittingly violent for what it was, and eventually LAX were getting overrun because it was 2-on-3 because Conan had been taken out of the match. But then he came out, he'd recovered, he came out to save the day in his sort of Conan way. Can't really move too much anymore, but he came out hitting low blows. I think he had a sock with coins in it that he started battering the heels with, and eventually it was just the three against Eddie Kingston. LAX then hit their big triple team finisher, pinning Eddie Kingston, and I guess ending the feud. It seems like they've won the war. This seemed to be very much in the build-up and everything. The blow-off with both teams having to consult like the gang leader to sort out a fitting stipulation and that sort of thing. And yeah, it seems with the babyfaces picking up the big victory that they're probably going to end the feud now, I'd guess, but you never know what's going to happen, especially when the feud is so intense, it could theoretically just run and run. Then we had what can only be described as like a mini horror movie. I guess it was while they were clearing up the ring, like after the whole deathmatch sort of thing, putting the canvas back on, sorting out the turnbuckle pads and that sort of thing. We had Allie in her quest to save Kiera Hogan and Rosemary from the clutches of Sooyoung, and to do so, she had to go to the undead realm with the help of Father James Mitchell. She struck a deal with him. She said, help me get to this like undead evil realm, and she transported there via some sort of teleporting coffin. Then she found herself in like this creepy house, like the alternate realm and all that sort of thing. Found Sooyoung and killed her with an axe to the neck. There was blood everywhere. It was cheesy, but deliberately so, and to be honest with you, I still found it enjoyable. Then Allie found one of the coffins, popped it open, and there was Kiera Hogan, so she saved her, woke her up, was like, come on, we've got to get out of here, come on. Went back to the teleporting coffin that she'd originally arrived in, and it had been locked shut. That's when, I can't believe I'm describing this one, that's when James Mitchell came along and went, you know what, Allie, I told you I'd get you here, but I never said anything about helping you get home. Oh, she's trapped in the undead realm. All of Sooyoung's undead brides then came through. It looks like they were gonna like jump Kiera Hogan and Allie, but then Rosemary just teleported out of nowhere, and I swear it sounds like I'm describing a fever dream. Started knocking out all of the undead brides with right hands, vicious right hands actually, and then Sooyoung staggered through. She's still alive or undead, pulled the axe out of her neck, threw it down, and went for the three, and they had to like escape and make their way out of there, and eventually they did. But it was only Allie and Kiera Hogan. They had to leave Rosemary behind. Oh no. So eventually Allie and Kiera Hogan woke up back in the normal world, the normal realm, I guess. And then Allie was like, oh no, we have to go back and save her. And Kiera Hogan went, no, she volunteered to stay behind, it's all right. And Allie went, it's not all right. And we got a sense that the darkness is really starting to envelop Allie. And I really like that for her character, because obviously she's really sugary and babyface and stuff. And I thought, well, this is really good, but where can it go from here? Well, this is where it can go from here. She can literally turn evil, very evil indeed. So that was interesting. Not, you know, not what you expect to see, I guess, on a wrestling show, but I like the fact, I suppose, that the spirit of the final deletion and all that sort of stuff kind of still lives on in Impact Wrestling. It's not my cup of tea, I'm not a particularly big fan of it, but I did sort of enjoy it a little bit. And finally, we had the main event, the Impact Wrestling Heavyweight Championship match between the champion, Austin Aries, and the challenger, Johnny Impact, aka Johnny Mundo, John Morrison, Johnny Nitro. You know who it is, the handsome one with the hair. So as I said earlier in this video, this was a very, very intense personal feud. Johnny Impact's wife, Taya Valkyrie, had been brought into it. She actually accompanied Johnny Impact to ringside, and Aries was joined by his cronies, Moose and Killer Kross. To be honest with you, I still don't know what to make of this match. It was okay, like, it started off strange because they went for the whole shoot, like, work kind of angle where the pair looked like they were actually fighting at times. There was a lot of messy grappling, a lot of really hard, like, what looked to be legit punches, but I think were worked, kicks and that sort of thing. They were laying it in pretty hard though. Eventually, when things started to calm down and develop into a proper wrestling match, it was really good stuff. Johnny Impact showed off his amazing parkour ability at one point, leaping and sort of sandwiching his legs between the guardrail and the apron. Aries passed underneath, and then Impact did a big moonsault, kicked him in the head, maybe inadvertently on the way down, but it looked really cool anyway. Then Johnny Impact basically almost had the match won on several occasions. No, they both almost had the match won on several occasions. Austin Aries had a rope break at one point, Johnny Impact had a rope break at one point, both very, very good near falls. They hit finishes on each other, both kicked out of the finishes, and it looked as though there was no way to really settle this. But then the turning point arrived when Austin Aries ducked a clothesline from Impact and hit a tope to the outside, cleaning out Taya Valkyrie in truly evil, heelish fashion. Ultimately though, this would lead to his downfall as Johnny Impact really unleashed a lot of rage on him, started beating him up properly, eventually resorted to stealing Austin Aries' finisher, hitting a brainbuster on Aries before heading up top, hitting Starship Pain, and winning the Impact World Championship. We now have a new Impact Wrestling champion. So that was a big development, one that I actually didn't predict. I thought they'd keep the belt on Aries for a while, but it turns out no, we're going to end the show with a classic babyface, like, heroic victory. Or were we? Because then something very strange happened indeed, and honestly, usually I think I'm quite skeptical when it comes to stuff like this, like shooty stuff, which I'm about to describe. I often think that those sort of things are just work shoots. At the moment, like minutes after watching the show, I genuinely don't know whether this was a work or a shoot at all. I have no idea, especially given the history of the man involved, often quite a discontent sort of figure. So immediately after taking the 3 count, Austin Aries popped up, no-sold the finish, and just shouted a bit at Don Callis and Josh Matthews up in the balcony. I guess it was aimed at Don Callis, given his position backstage at Impact. And then just walked to the back, flipping the bird to the crowd and to the promotion seemingly. And it really just sort of sapped the life out of everything. Everyone was like, that was really weird. Impact, you know, obviously celebrating the ring with his wife was a big happy moment, but everything was focused on Austin Aries apparently just breaking kayfabe totally. If this really is the case, and Aries did genuinely break kayfabe and go into business for himself and make Impact, the new champion, look really, really weak, then surely he's gone. Like, they can't really stand for that. If this was a work, then I'm not a big fan of it, to be honest. I never really liked work shoot stuff unless it's done right. A great example would be CM Punk's pipe bomb promo, because everything that he said could also sort of be taken in a kayfabe sense. It made sense both ways. This can't be taken in a kayfabe way at all. Austin Aries popping up straight after taking 2 finishes, one his own, walking to the back, shouting at one of the backstage guys up in the balcony. And I don't know, it was just really strange and a really odd ending to one of Impact's biggest shows. I don't really know what to make of it. On the whole, I'd say the Bound for Glory was an okay show. Pretty good matches on there. I enjoyed quite a few of them, especially the OVE match. The Women's Championship match was also really good. The main event was really good until the finish, which just baffled me. And honestly, given the choice, I actually would rather that this was a shoot, because I don't like the idea of Impact falling back into their own ways, like their old ways, excuse me, when they'd rely on this sort of stuff like to a depressingly frequent degree. But yeah, let us know what you thought of that in the comment section down below. It was still an entertaining night of wrestling, for better or for worse, I guess. And yeah, that was Impact Wrestling's Bound for Glory 2018. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let us know what you think in the comments down below of that, because it was weird. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter if you want, at Jack the Jobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic. Check us out on Patreon as well if you want, patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, of course, if you haven't already, to hit subscribe and to join us.